Right, so there's these two options sort of at sea, both in a mobile way with a cruise ship or with seapods. Then there's on land through agreements or partnerships with existing governments. Now there's also another idea that Balaji Srinivasan proposed, a so-called network state that is starting a community or a tribe in the cloud. Can you kind of compare and trust that idea to your idea of a charter city?
Yeah, I mean, that's something we've kind of for back into too, like the idea of like virtual. The thing is that basically, if you look at from the industry model, in the virtual world, costs of switching providers and barriers to entry are really low. So barriers to entry is like, how hard is it to start a new provider? In nation states, it's really, really hard to start a new country. It's really, really easy to start a new like digital nation, not easy to start one that provides the things that a traditional nation state do. And then the other is like cost of switching. It's hard to change your country. More and more people are able to change their country, and that puts more competitive pressure on governments. And we see governments like trying to compete harder for people with things like the digital nomad visas and programs. And online, switching costs are super, super low, and it's really competitive. And so online already has the characteristics that lead to much more rapid innovation of jurisdictions. And that's why I think we find much more values alignment and much higher levels of operational excellence online. And so like, that's great. And my focus has always been, hey, like, how can we bring those features, the innovation of like technology in the world of bits, into this really, really important place of government? Because the thing is that like government, it's basically a virtual, even though it's like enforced in the physical world, like from a conceptually, like it is a virtual infrastructure layer. The association of a body of law with a piece of property is just like bits in people's mind. And you can like change what bodies of law apply to a contract or to a piece of property just by like flipping those bits, right? Just by like contracting out of them. And so it's like being done in a world of atoms, limited, controlled way right now. But I think it's like actually fundamentally much more like bits and software. And so trying to like get it to be that way is kind of like my focus as something that seems like really worth doing to me. And so, the people who are doing, and I work with Balaji, and I'm involved in some network state projects. Like, I think like having the digital world like take over or replace some of the things traditionally done by nation states is a great idea, and I'm happy to work on it. But to me, it's like not the big gap. It's not like the thing that really like needs to happen. That's really holding people back.
Yeah, and to me, it seems like the argument that you made, it's kind of about the switching costs. So right now, the model for an entrepreneur to start a new charter city is kind of like you need to already have a lot of existing social capital locally on the ground to get kind of to an MOU with an existing government. And you also need sort of a lot of expertise in things like real estate and building the physical world, right? So the upfront costs for that are probably in the several millions or tens of millions, right? And with the network state, you can kind of start earlier and then kind of get to that higher upfront cost, more capital intensive parts later, right?
Yeah, I think that's super important for sure. And, I love what like Praxis has done with this, innovating and said like, hey, because I think like even though like the Honduras program is incredible and Prosper is like the 0 to 1, it's like the leading company in this industry. I feel like it kind of spoiled us in that it was driven by the country and not by like the movement, which is great. But also like they changed their constitution before there was like companies. And that kind of led us to a mindset of like, oh, first you work with the country, you get them to pass the regulation, then you like start companies that work within it. And that's really bad because it requires putting a lot of effort and maybe capital in ahead of like a regulation, which can easily like not get passed. And I think the model of like praxis of aggregating demand, forming a community of people who want to live together, and then growing that community and growing the social cohesion within it, and talking to multiple sovereigns, and kind of like, all right, like we'll ink a deal, but we're not going to like start building until you like pass the law and we like actually form our community first. I think is really powerful, important way, and that's something that both Praxis and Balaji have like innovated on, is like using the cloud to like to address the like what we call in this business the cold start problem. Like cities are based partly on network effects, and so starting a new city is always going to be a super uphill battle because you don't have these network effects. That's the cold start problem, and anything you can do to address that, like building up a digital group, a collective first, is addressing like one of like the core challenges, and so is super helpful.